Labor Day, and at Missouri's sprawling Lake of the Ozarks, the weather's still in its summertime pattern, and so are the bass. Join us as 37 of the best bass fishing teams in mid-America converge on Warsaw, Missouri's picturesque Drake Harbor for the Ranger Mercury Platinum Team Championship. Year history, the Ranger Mercury Platinum Team Tournament Series has drawn some of the finest anglers in mid-America for its popular buddy format events. Now, after 5 qualifying events, the cream of the Platinum Series crop has gathered at Lake of the Ozarks for the final event of the year, the Platinum Team Championship. In team tournaments like this one, the 2 anglers in the boat work as a team toward getting a 6-fish limit, and then they split any prize money they win. In this tournament, the winners will receive a new 2002 Ranger 518 VS, while the second place team will take home a 2002 Mercury 150 EFI outboard. In all, 37 teams are on hand for this event, but 3 would be considered favorites because they have proved they have the right stuff to win competitive events like this one. At the top of the list is the team of Jim and Troy Akins, who topped the Platinum Team Tournament standings with a season total of 59.9 pounds. While Jim was fishing other tournaments, Troy teamed with Jamie Conrad to win the Platinum Team Tournament at Truman with 18.85 pounds. In addition, both Jim and Troy have won individual titles on Lake of the Ozarks, so it's clear they are the team to beat. Another team to watch is Jimmy and Jackie Davis, who ended the season second in the overall weight standings. Earlier in the year, Jimmy won the Lake of the Ozarks event with his dad, who was substituting for Jackie. So the guys from Team Davis definitely know how to come through when the chips are down. Another of the favorites is the team of Lynn Luther and Shannon Moody. Now, these 2 Arkansas anglers won the overall pounds title in 2001, and they almost did it again this season. They finished third with 49.5 pounds and had strong finishes in 3 of the 5 Platinum Series events. Reviewing the top 10 teams during the regular season, Jim and Troy Akins, Jimmy and Jackie Davis, and Lynn Luther and Shannon Moody hold down the top 3 spots. Jerry Weisinger and Randy Stewart finished the season in 4th place with a total of 46.8 pounds, followed by Doug Carroll and Jack Hall with 44.1. In the rest of the top 10, Rufus Harris and Larry Herndon lead the way in 6th place with 30.05 total pounds, followed by Diego Segui and Lyle Vale, Jay Halsey and Mike Kobe, Danny Burns and Greg Ryan, and Bill Pecota and Terry McDowell. The morning of day 1 dawns sunny and bright, but there's an early morning chill in the air that has caused many of those planning on making a long run down lake to don windbreakers and rain suits in preparation for the 70-mile-per-hour boat ride. Now, technically, there is no shortage of water for tournament contestants to fish. They have all the way from Truman Dam in Warsaw to Lake of the Ozarks Bagnell Dam, a distance of 92 miles. So it must mean something when nearly a quarter of the teams in the tournament begin fishing within a mile of Drake Harbor. There is an abundance of boat docks and deadfalls along the narrow Osage River channel just below Truman Dam, and so it seems there should be plenty of bass concentrated in the area. But so far this morning, that doesn't seem to be the case. Or if the bass are there, they certainly aren't biting. While many of the tournament competitors are finding the going tough, that's not true of Jim and Troy Akins. Both Jim and Troy won Central Pro-Am titles pitching small brown jigs around boat docks and ledge rock. And so far this morning, they're following the same strategy. The upper end of Lake of the Ozarks has long been popular among tournament fishermen because there is less boat traffic and there are more quality fish accessible in shallow water. And that suits the Akins style to a T. If they can keep this up, they're certain to be among the Day 1 leaders. Mike Webb and partner Steve Boyo entered only the Platinum Series regular season tournament on Table Rock, but they walked away with first place in that event, and it was good enough to put them in the championship. Unfortunately, their good fortune seems to have deserted them. Early this morning, they experienced engine problems, and now they're stranded in Whites Branch Creek. But there are enough boat docks that they intend to make a go of it right where they are. Tony and Mike Fornelli are off to a slow start this morning. They've yet to land a keeper, but they've been catching fish, and they remain optimistic. Finally, Tony gets a hold of a good bass, and Mike hurries to assist him with the net. Tony works the bass close to the boat, where Mike scoops it up. Now the Fornellis are finally on the scoreboard, because this one's going in the live well. So far, the day has been frustrating for Lynn Luther and Shannon Moody. They had expected to do well in the tournament, but so far this morning, they've landed only one keeper. They haven't had many bites, and most of them have been from non-keepers, so frustration is beginning to set in. When Luther misses a strike he knows he should have had, he's determined to get the bass he missed. Finally, he gets the bass to strike his jig, but when he gets it in the boat, he finds that it too is too short to keep. While many of the teams in the tournament are fishing jigs and soft plastics around boat docks, Keith Brashears and partner Nicky Parson are concentrating on working spinnerbaits around isolated natural cover. Throughout the course of the season, Brashears and Parson finished 13th in total pounds caught. But if they can keep up the pace they've established so far today, they could be in position to win all the marbles right here. When the anglers return to Drake Harbor for the day one weigh-in, Jimmy and Jackie Davis are one of the first teams to weigh in.
Hey, how many you got, Jack?
We got 6.
6, and how are you catching your fish?
Real slow.
You're fishing slow or the bite is slow?
Both.
Both. Now, I saw you. I was out taking pictures on the lake today. You weren't real far down the lake. How far did you ultimately go down the lake today?
Probably 20 miles.
So you ran all over, just hitting spots that you like. Good limit of fish right here. Nice lead. 19.75 pounds. 1975, Jack. Nice job. Good start there.
The team of Keith Brashears and Nicky Parsons comes in with a limit, but it weighs only 13.05 pounds, and they can't overtake the Davises. The same is true of Tim Taylor and Robert Robbins, whose 6-fish limit weighs in at 15.3 pounds. Next up, Jim and Troy Akins.
6 fish, and how are you catching your fish?
Catch them on a jig.
Now, is the bite shallow, or are the fish real shallow, or are they back in kind of in a medium depth?
All the fish, they probably come from 3 foot or less.
20 foot or less, or
3
foot or less? Wow, what a sack of fish. 22.65 pounds, 22.65. Good job, bud. Go back it up again tomorrow. We're going to have a shootout, it looks like.
Then it's the team of Larry Herndon and Rufus Harris.
How many bass do you guys have today, Larry?
We got 5.
That one there's worth about 3. That's a toad right there. 5.95 pounds. Let's get a picture of this fish, Donnie, real quick. $5.95. That's big bass right now. Worth $700 and some change. That is a beautiful fish right there. How you guys catching your fish, Larry?
We caught them all on Bagley honeybees.
Caught them on little crankbaits. 5 bass here total. 13.55 pounds. Go get us a limit tomorrow, bud.
Jeff Bradford and Ron Tolliver come in with a 6-fish limit that weighs 17.15 pounds to move into contention, and they're soon followed by Bobby and Bill Albert. The Alberts also have a limit and move into 3rd place with 18.15 pounds. Next are Wayne Diffie and Terry Thomas.
You got 6 here, so one of you will throw one type of bait and the other one throws another type of bait. Tell me what types of baits which ones you prefer to throw.
The ones they'll bite.
You'll throw what he's not throwing, just as long as you can get a bite, you're happy.
Well, if one of us gets catching a lot of fish, then we'll both throw the same thing. But, you know, the way it is right now, you're just not catching a whole lot, so we throw something different all the time.
Good sack of fish. 6 bass limit that weighs 17.70 pounds.
At the end of the first day, Jim and Troy Akins sit atop the Platinum Team Championship standings with 22.65 pounds. Jimmy and Jackie Davis are in 2nd place with 19.75 pounds, followed by the teams of Bobby and Bill Albert, Terry Thomas and Wayne Diffie, and Ron Tolliver and Jeff Bradford. In the rest of the top 10, Tim Taylor and Robert Robbins lead the way in 6th place with 15.3 pounds. But they have only a narrow edge over the teams of Rufus Harris and Larry Herndon, Bill Pacoda and Terry McDowell, Kirk Fisher and Randy Oliver, and Keith Brashears and Nicky Parson. Stay tuned for exciting Day 2 action. We'll be right back. Helpful hints from some of Central Pro-Am's top competitors. Jim Akins is one of the preeminent jig fishermen in mid-America, and there's always a lot to learn when he discusses how he fishes a jig his way.
Probably 10 years ago, I started keeping a lot of records on how a fish bit the jig, where the fish was hooked at, and started recognizing that you get more bites on a smaller jig. Seemed to me like the fish were going more to smaller baits than they were larger baits. I fished a big jig for several years, and it seems like the bigger baits, a lot of people think will catch just big fish, but the big fish will bite the little jig the same as the big bait. I determined from fishing it and from all the records that the lighter jig, the fall speed, the line size, different things like that made all the difference in the world about how the fish would bite the jig. The round-headed jig, after a long period of time, we determined would come through the brush and through the rocks better than any other design. There's a lot of other heads out that will come through certain things better, but a little round-headed jig will come through the brush and the rocks and come over limbs better than any other head. Well, several years ago, when I was fishing the BASS tournaments, we got to discussing amongst a lot of the guys the way that the eye set in a jig, and when I was keeping records about where the fish was hooked at, I got on this cross eye thing, and I, from keeping records and noticing wherever fish that I caught was hooked at, you would have a much higher percentage of hooking the fish in the top hard part of the mouth if you had the cross eye. And then I got to playing with the jig, bringing it through pieces of obstacles laying on a workbench or something like that, and noticed that the jig would not turn and hook a piece of structure near as well if you had the cross eye. The diameter of the line, it has a tremendous effect on the fall speed of the jig. From the line dragging in the water as the jig falls down, and you want your jig to have a straight down presentation on a light slack line. The jig falling through the water and the impulse strike comes from a bass seeing the jig fall from the sky, you know, from the surface of the water, and it comes down as a silhouette. That's why in the darker waters you would want to fish a little darker jig. In the clearer waters you'd want to fish a little lighter colored jig. But the silhouette of the jig falling through the water is what makes the bass want to strike it. And it needs to come in from the surface nice and quiet. In stumps or any kind of wooded area, even heavy bushes, here again you want to put the jig in the water as light as you can, very small splash, and put it in close to the area on the log that you feel like the fish is in. And the fish should be in the dark area on the log. Wherever you're seeing the shadow on the log, wherever there's a limb coming off a log, or where you've got two rocks together, you can go between the two rocks, wherever the dark area is at, and put the jig in and make it fall straight down into that area. Because the fish is sitting there and it's an impulse strike, and the jig needs to come in from over his head right down where he can strike it.
On the morning of day 2, the Platinum Team Championship anglers come racing down the Osage River from Drake Harbor, eager to get to their fishing spots early while the morning is still cool. They know that if today is anything like day 1, fishing could be tough, and the hot September sun could easily raise the temperature to nearly 100 degrees by mid-afternoon. When day 1 leaders Jim and Troy Akins get to their spot, it doesn't take long for them to realize that things have changed, and catching bass isn't going to be as easy as it was the day before. Now, if this real estate looks familiar, it should, because it's exactly the same cove where the pair caught their limit on day 1. But this morning, the bite is almost non-existent. The Akins are getting very few strikes, and the ones they are catching are all small. Granted, it's still early, but unless things change soon, the Akins could be in for a very long day. Bobby and Bill Albert started the day in 3rd place, 4.5 pounds behind the leaders, but they're threatening to make up that deficit. The bass they're catching aren't large, but they already have 3 keepers. The Alberts are alternating between jigs and 8-inch plastic worms around docks in Cole Camp and Turkey Creeks. And if they can come in with a limit and the Akins continue to struggle, they could make a horse race out of this tournament yet. Keith Brashears and Mickey Parson are back to their day 1 tricks. While most of the leaders are still sticking with slower moving lures around boat docks, Brashears and Parson are continuing to catch bass on spinnerbaits. Unfortunately, they started the day nearly 10 pounds behind the leaders, and so they'll need at least one big kicker fish to have a chance of winning. But if they keep catching fish, and those fishing jigs and soft plastic lures start to falter, Brashears and Parson could make this interesting before the day is over. Jimmy and Jackie Davis are finding the fishing tough, but by midday they've managed to scratch out 5 keepers. Their best success has come by fishing boat docks and nearby brush piles in 5 feet of water or less. And the Davises are so focused on their pattern that they're bypassing entire stretches of bank that don't fit the pattern to get to the next set of boat docks. Make no mistake, not everything is going right for the Davises today, and they're finding how tricky navigating the upper Osage can be. But finally, Jimmy gets the strike they've been waiting for, and it doesn't take him long to get it in the boat. Now, the Davises have their limit, and you can be sure this one's going right down to the wire. When the tournament anglers return to Drake Harbor for the final weigh-in, Bobby and Bill Albert are among the first to come to the scales.
How are you catching these fish?
We're catching them swimming a bass town jig and a lucky strike worm.
Swimming the jig and swimming the worm? Both of those, Bobby? Or just swimming the jig? 6 fish limit today, 14.45 pounds, 14.45. 2-day total, 32.60 pounds. There's your leaders right now, Bobby and Billy Albert. Good job.
Next are Wayne Diffie and Terry Thomas.
They had 17 pounds and some change yesterday. They have 4 bass today, 10.65 pounds. A lot of money on the line here. 28.35 pounds. Wayne, tell me what happened. What happened to the fish from yesterday?
Well, we didn't. Just had bad luck today. We had some bites, but we lost a couple, and it wasn't as easy as it was yesterday.
How were you catching the fish yesterday?
Throwing a jig and a crankbait.
What part of the lake were you fishing? Do you know?
That way.
Wayne's been on the lake 3 different times. Come up here with Terry Thomas has been here a lot. Was it a long ways that way or just a little ways?
About 10, 20 miles.
10 or 20 miles. All right, bud.
Ron Tolliver and Jeff Bradford come in with another good catch, but they have only 5 fish, and their 2-day total of 29.75 pounds also falls short. Then the Davises come to the scales.
This team was in second place yesterday with 6 bass that weighed 19.75 pounds. Jack, the lead right now around 32 pounds. You got them again today.
We got 6.
Are they as good a sack as you had yesterday?
No, they're not near as good.
Awfully good, though. Awfully good sack of fish. 15.40 pounds. 2-day total. We're going to get some of those fish out here and get a picture of them. 2-day total, 35.15 pounds. Here's your new leaders right now in the 2002 Ranger Mercury Platinum Team Championship. Buddy, how'd you catch those fish, Jack?
We caught them on a jig real shallow.
Right here close?
Today we went a little bit further than we went yesterday. We caught one of them within about 3 miles, and the rest of them came 15, 20 miles down the river.
Did a little running today. I know you had a tough practice. Right now, though, $20,000 on the line, and you're leading the tournament. Put your hands together, ladies and gentlemen. Jackie Davis and Jimmy Davis Jr.
Jerry Weisinger and Randy Stewart were in 11th place after day 1. But today, they leap up in the standings big time.
How many bass you got today, Randy?
We have a limit again.
Got a limit again. They had a limit yesterday. They weighed 12.40 pounds. They were just out of the money. How much are they going to weigh today?
A little more.
Got some better fish today. 6 bass today. Boy, you were right. 15.45 pounds. 2-day total, 27.85 pounds. Good job, bud.
Finally, there's only one team left that can overtake the Davises, and that's Jim and Troy Akins.
They had 22.65 yesterday. Leading the tournament right now, Jimmy and Jackie Davis with 35.15. So we need about 12.5 pounds. How many fish you got today?
We got 4 little ones.
They going to weigh 12.5 pounds?
They're just going to have to feed them a lot of food.
They're not going to weigh 12.5 pounds. 4 bass that weighed 8.05 pounds. What happened to those fish, Jim?
Well, we had about 6 to get off on it. They was biting strange. We couldn't. They'd get the bait and set them, and they'd just turn it loose. We had enough bites to make it, but just wasn't our day.
It's official now. Jimmy and Jackie Davis win the Ranger Mercury Platinum Team Championship with a two-day total of 35.15 pounds, giving them a 2.5-pound edge over Bobby and Bill Albert. First day leaders Jim and Troy Akins come in third with 30.7 pounds, followed by the teams of Ron Tolliver and Jeff Bradford and Terry Thomas and Wayne Diffie. In the rest of the top 10, Jerry Weisinger and Randy Stewart finished sixth with 27.85 pounds, followed by Keith Brashears and Mickey Parson, Jay Halsey and Mike Kobe, Lynn Luther and Shannon Moody, and Bob Neff and Jeff Stegner. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.